Next item of business, we have Mr. Newmoff sponsored this nice lady. Would you like to introduce her?
Thank you, Judge. I would. Take pleasure in introducing Ms. Juliet Ritchie. That's R-I-C-H-E-Y. And Ms. Ritchie is the planning director for Washington County. She is going to speak with us a little bit today about how the National Flood Insurance Program works in unincorporated portions of Washington County. I'd just remind you that this is our third installment in our learning process about this program, which certainly has gotten a lot of people involved in the conversation. And Ms. Ritchie will present the facts as she sees them, how it operates at the county level, about staffing, administrating the program, some of the costs associated therewith, and perhaps even some examples about how the spring floods affected Washington County and how we can help to mitigate some of the problems. And then we'll open up to questions. Juliet, thank you for being here. We appreciate your time and effort to come up here and say this.
Like you said, I'm Juliet Ritchie. Try to speak to this so everybody can hear me. I'll give you just a brief synopsis of kind of what we do in Washington County, and then I'd like to really open it up to questions.
Can I ask you a question, please?
Sure.
Are you a county employee or a federal employee?
I'm a county employee. I work for Washington County, and I'm the county planning director and floodplain administrator for Washington County. The county judge is my supervisor. And I understand, because we are part of the flood program, I have lots of people from FEMA come talk to me too, and I think that, like many programs, it can be a little bit confusing and overwhelming and not very clear at all when you get presentations from them. And so my goal is not to sell you on the flood insurance program or dissuade you from it, but just kind of tell you how we manage it in Washington County. I think it's important that you hear from another county, because I think that the FEMA training and even the state, they seem to focus heavily on how it's implemented in cities, using building permits and things that we don't have in all the counties in Arkansas. And so that's my goal, is to just let you have a time to have a candid conversation with me, and I'll be happy to answer all the questions as truthfully as I can. So just briefly, Washington County has been a member of the NFIP since 1991. I've been there since 2005 and been the floodplain administrator since 2005. So it's hard for me to speak exactly on what happened between 1991 and 2005. But I think that we have a pretty good system right now. It's not perfect, like any system. When I first got there, they tell you that you're supposed to be monitoring your floodplain. If you're like us, you have floodplain that's all over rural parts of the county, and it's like you couldn't even drive down the road and see part of it. It backs up other people's land, and I don't know. The way they present it sometimes, whatever, you should be driving around with a boat if that's what you need to do to monitor your floodplain. But that's just not feasible. I don't think it's feasible. And I've discussed that with Mr. Borngasser on the state level, and he agrees. And truthfully, we've been, you get audited every couple of years when you're in the flood program, and they've never had any problems with the way that we do things. Generally, the way I feel is if you're making the best faith effort, within reason, to implement the program, if you choose to be in it, then they seem to go along with that fairly well. Well, anyway, around 2006, we decided, since we don't have actual building permits, it's hard to know when people are building a new home, because we're not requiring them to permit those. So they're like, so what would be a good way to know when that's happening? And I said, 90% of the time, or probably more, people are going to get a new address for a structure they're building, the 911 address, which I understand most Department of Emergency Management, just like ours does in Washington County, issues those. And so we said, this will be great. What we'll do is we'll just look at all the new address applications and make sure that they're not in floodplain. If they are, we can have a discussion about where the house is sitting, if it's going to comply with the regulations. And so that's what we started doing, and what I passed out to you is that's just our 911 address application. We worked with our emergency management department to get the part that I highlighted at the bottom added for you. And essentially what we do is anytime anybody submits an address application for anything, we just decide it's easier to vet all of them. You know, a lot of them are going to be for barns, or somebody wants a water meter, you know, some kind of irrigation or watering for their cattle, or things like that. So that's easy. You just look at that and say, no problem. So what we do is, you know, they fill out that and they put the parcel number. I do understand that y'all, similar to us, have digital mapping that you do your 911 addressing on, that you have aerials, and that you have digital floodplain maps. Whether you're in the program or not, there are digital floodplain maps that exist. So essentially, the kind of the second and third pages of those handouts I gave you show you, you know, what you pull up. You pull up the parcel number in question. You see if it has floodplain on it. I just showed several different examples of types of floodplain. You see if the structure or whatever they're building or addressing is going to be in that floodplain. I can tell you, most of the time it's not. And so if it's not, you just sign off on it, move on. If there is floodplain on the property, what we do, and I don't think you have to take these steps, but what we do is I like to call that applicant and say, do you know that you have floodplain on your property? And, you know, a lot of times they do, sometimes they don't. I'll say, yeah, it looks like your structure's not going anywhere near there, but how about I'll just print you out an aerial with the floodplain shown on there, just so you know in the future, if you're looking at doing any future building, you'll know where it is, and you'll know that you'd have to get a permit if you built in that area. And people are usually really excited to get a map of their property and understand that about it. Really, we don't have a lot of people who want to build in the floodplain because, as you may know, if you have a mortgage, then you know the people are going to be required to carry flood insurance on that property if it is in a floodplain. And so, you know, lots of times people aren't looking to add expense to their lives unnecessarily. Now you're going to have pieces of property where it's inevitable, you know, that they don't have anywhere else to build. But again, that's really rare. And I'll tell you, a lot of times people have cited, you know, roughly cited a home or a structure of some kind. You know, maybe it's even a barn or some chicken houses. And I talk to them and they say, oh, well, if we just move it 12 feet this way, we won't be in the floodplain. We won't have to worry about flood insurance. We won't have to worry about flooding. And then the whole thing becomes a moot point. So that's pretty much how the phone conversations go. Like I said, I'm guessing that we get 8 to 10 address applications a week. I don't know what y'all get in y'all's county. And we just do the unincorporated area, which I'm assuming, I don't know, y'all may address in cities too, I'm not sure. But like I said, probably 80 to 90% of us aren't going to have floodplain. I feel like the time, you know, y'all are talking about time and manpower. The time needed to check this because everything is already on these digital maps, and that's what your addresser is working on to put on new addresses anyway. Is essentially just clicking a button, adding that floodplain layer, and looking at it. And then if it is an issue, then having that conversation with the property owners. I would say that as a result of address applications and floodplain, we probably make maybe at top 10 site visits a year. You know, and that's looking at 8 to 10 address applications a week. Where in the times I feel like we need a site visit is if, you know, if I'm not getting a clear understanding about exactly where the building is proposed to go from a phone conversation. You know, sometimes phone conversations are so far. You just need to go out there and look. Or if we feel pretty sure, but I want to do some, you know, actual measuring on the ground to make sure that it is clear of the floodplain and things like that, then we'll go out there. So I think that, and that's the primary part of the program that you're looking at as far as the manpower. And I did talk with Mr. Morris just briefly on the phone, and you know, you'd have to discuss with him what ability your addresser has to do to look at all these things. But just telling y'all, it's not a big, that part does not take a lot of time. I would say maybe we spend an hour a week looking and checking for floodplain, probably a lot less than that. And I would say just looking average an hour, because sometimes you have to make phone calls, then depending on how the phone call is.
Is your full-time job administering this program?
No. Definitely not.
So and what percentage of your time would you say it takes to administer?
Administer floodplain program. Less than 10%. And let me just tell you, the exception to that is when you have a big flood, like we had this year. Like this year, in 2008, we had a lot of flooding, and that's going to take more man-hours. But I'm guessing that probably your emergency management department or whatever, when you have big floods, you're spending a lot of time responding anyway. And a lot of what we do is in conjunction with our emergency management department during flood. Now, when we had this flood this year, we definitely spent, I didn't tally up the hours, but basically our emergency management department would give us addresses of where there was damage reported on structures, and then we went through and plotted those addresses. You have already in your addressing system, and then you're turning on the floodplain layers, and then you're isolating which of those addresses have damage that are in the floodplain, because that's what you would have to look at permitting and seeing what the extent of the damage was for administering your ordinance is damage that's in that floodplain area.
So as far as floodplain administration, you're the only person that handles that, and that's 10% of your...
No, I have other people in my office that also review these applications. We all do other jobs. We have 4 full-time people in our planning office. Okay, so that they also review these applications. I'm saying all together as an office, I am the floodplain administrator, but they are also looking for things as well. And I'd say as an office as a whole, with the exception of flooding years where you have major floods, I would say 10%.
Or I get the impression from what you're saying that you're a planning and zoning administrator for the county too?
Yes.
Okay, so you handle all of the zoning applications, the planning applications, and this too. So it fits in well with your job.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
On looking at these maps of yours, you have this flood zone A designated on here.
Mm-hmm.
If a farmer wanted to put a fence across that, would he need to go through you?
I've never permitted fences unless they're, as long as it's like what I would think of as a normal farm fence where water can pass through it. And that's not to say that debris is not going to get caught in it in a flood. I've never permitted fences in the past. For the first time this year, interestingly enough, yesterday, I got a complaint from another neighbor about a type of fence that he feels like his neighbor has put up that is causing flooding on his property. And I'm not exactly sure this is one of the times when I'm going to go make a site visit actually next week, because it seems to be some sort of combination of like what I would think of like it's cattle panels and like a wood fence like you can see like a horse farm. And I don't know if it's that specific combination that's causing problems because it's more opaque than, either one of those would be one. I'm not sure. There's a general rule. People ask me that, first of all, I don't think but nobody hardly ever asks me if they can put up a fence or not. But no, I don't permit that because generally it's not going to affect the flow of water. What you're looking at is things that are going to be put across in the floodplain that could basically wash downstream themselves and cause damage by clogging up bridges or culverts downstream. So if you have a structure, whether it's a shed or a barn that's not built well, water rises, it falls, washes downstream, clogs up the bridge, and then you have all kinds of crazy flooding and maybe even damage to some of your county bridges. Or